My daughter-in-law told me to sleep in the garage. That evening, I made her the most important phone call of her life. She just didn't know it yet. It was a Tuesday in early November, when everything unraveled. I had spent 41 years building Whitfield Clock and repair on the main street of Harlan, Georgia. Not a glamorous business, not the kind of thing that gets your name in magazines, but it was mine, built with my hands, my father's tools, and the kind of patience that most people in this world have completely forgotten how to find. I came home that evening smelling of machine oil and solder, the way I had every evening since I was 26 years old. The moment I pushed open the side door into the kitchen, I knew something was wrong. The air in the house had a charge to it, like the stillness before a summer storm breaks over the mountains. My daughter-in-law was standing at the kitchen island. She was wearing her real estate blazer, even though it was past 7 in the evening. She had a manila folder open in front of her, her fingers pressed flat against the papers inside like she was physically holding them down. She didn't say hello. She didn't look up. "Sign these," she said. I set my coat on the hook by the door. I walked to the island and looked down at the papers. They were dense with legal language, the kind of language designed to make ordinary people feel small and confused. "What am I signing?" I asked. She finally looked up. Her eyes were flat and practical. She had the look of someone running a negotiation, not talking to the man who had given her and my son a home for the last 4 years. "It's a deed transfer and a trust dissolution," she said. "We've consulted with an attorney. Daddy, you're 67 years old. You don't have anyone to leave this property to except us anyway. And frankly, holding a $400,000 asset in your personal name, when we're trying to grow our real estate portfolio, is just bad financial planning. This is what's smart. This is what protects the family." She called me Daddy when she wanted something. The rest of the time I was Walter, or nothing at all. I looked at the papers again. The property in question was not just the house. It was the shop. The 2-story building on Clement Street that my father had purchased in 1962, where I had learned to disassemble my first pocket watch at age 9, where I had proposed to my late wife, Ellen, on the stairs to the 2nd floor, where my grandson now came every Saturday morning to sit on the stool beside me and learn the difference between a mainspring and a balance wheel. "You want me to sign over the shop?" I said. "And the house," she said. "Both properties are under one deed. We've already spoken to a title company." I looked past her toward the living room. My son was sitting on the couch. He was 40 years old, and he had the posture of a much older and much more defeated man. He was staring at the television. The sound was muted. He wouldn't look at me. "My son," I said. "Are you part of this?" He cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat. "Dad, she's right. It just makes sense from a tax perspective. We talked to a guy. It's not a big deal. You'd still live in the house." He said it the way a man reads from a script he doesn't entirely believe. His voice had that careful flatness of someone who has rehearsed the words in a bathroom mirror and is now hoping they land without consequence. I looked at my daughter-in-law again. She had the pen in her hand now, extended toward me. "Thanks for watching. I didn't friend. I would have discovered." I looked at my daughter-in-law again, extended toward me. I thought about Ellen. I thought about the summer we painted the shop exterior ourselves, both of us on ladders in the July heat, arguing about the shade of green for the trim. I thought about my grandson asking me last Saturday what the engraving on the back of a Civil War officer's pocket watch actually said. I thought about 41 years of opening that door at 7 in the morning. I picked up the papers. I looked at them for a long moment. Then I set them back down. "No," I said. The word was quiet. It wasn't angry. It was just complete. My daughter-in-law set the pen down on the counter. Slowly. The way people set things down when they're deciding whether to pick them back up as a weapon. "Walter," she said. "The daddy was gone now. You need to think very carefully about what you're doing. We have been supporting this household. We have been paying utilities, groceries, insurance. We are carrying you. and you are refusing to contribute in the one way that actually matters. You've been living in my house for 4 years rent-free, I said. That's the contribution. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. She leaned forward. Her voice went low and precise. This isn't sustainable, she said. Frankly, your presence here is a disruption. You're in and out at odd hours. You smell like oil. You take up the guest room that we need for a home office. There's a very nice assisted living facility in Chattanooga. It's called Sunrise Gardens. I've already requested a brochure. The rooms are lovely. I looked at my son. He was still staring at the muted television. You'll love it there, my daughter-in-law continued. There are activities. There are people your own age. It's better for everyone. I'm sleeping in my own bed tonight, I said. She straightened up. Fine. But I want you to think about the bigger picture here. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about the future of this family. She picked up the folder, tucked it under her arm, and walked out of the kitchen. Her heels clicked down the hallway and up the stairs. My son finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes. Not guilt exactly. Something worse than guilt. It was a kind of tired resignation, like a man watching a building burn and deciding the walk to the fire station is just too far. Dad, she means well, he said. I looked at my son for a long moment. I thought about the day I taught him to tie his shoes on these very kitchen floors. I thought about the nights I sat outside his hospital room when he was 7 years old and had a fever that wouldn't break. Go to bed, I said. I walked upstairs to my room. The room I had shared with Ellen for 33 years before she passed. I sat on the edge of the bed. The house was quiet except for the sound of voices behind the closed door down the hall. They were arguing, in low tones. I could not make out the words. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Then I reached for the phone on the nightstand. I called the only person I knew who would pick up after 10 at night and not ask why I was calling so late. Raymond, I said when he answered. Raymond Greer had been my attorney since 1987. He was 3 years older than me, semi-retired, and mean as a bag of wet cats, which was exactly what I needed. Talk to me, Walter, he said. I told him about the papers. I told him about my daughter-in-law. I told him about the Sunrise Gardens brochure and the home office, and the way my son had stared at the television. Raymond was quiet for a moment. Have you looked at your accounts lately? He asked. The business accounts? I had been letting my daughter-in-law manage the bookkeeping for the shop for 8 months. She had offered, volunteered even. Said it would free up my time. Said she had a head for numbers. Said it was the least she could do. I had been grateful. I had been trusting. I said I hadn't looked recently. Raymond said, Get to the shop first thing tomorrow. Look at everything. Don't let her know you're looking. I didn't sleep that night. At 5:30 in the morning, I drove to the shop before the sun was up. I unlocked the heavy front door, walked past the display cases with their rows of repaired timepieces, and went into the back office. I turned on the single lamp on the desk. I opened the bookkeeping software on the old desktop computer. The password had been changed. I sat there looking at the login screen. Then I picked up the phone and called my accountant, Deb Purcell, who had been doing my business taxes since 2004. She was at her desk by 7. I told her what was happening. She had remote access credentials from tax season. She logged in. She called me back 11 minutes later. Her voice was careful and measured, the way a doctor sounds when the news is bad enough that they need to be sure of what they're saying before they say it. Walter, she said, there have been 17 transfers out of the business account in the last 6 months. They go to a company called Bright Horizon Properties, LLC. Total amount is a little over $92,000. Do you know that company? I did not know that company. I left the shop, drove to Raymond's office, and sat across from him while Deb faxed over what she had found. Raymond read through it without speaking. He had a face that had seen 4 decades of bad human decisions and didn't waste expression on most of them. But when he set the papers down and looked at me, there was something in his eyes that told me the news was worse than $92,000. I did some checking this morning before you came in, he said. Bright Horizon Properties, LLC, is registered in Delaware. The registered agent is your daughter-in-law. I looked at the window. Outside, a garbage truck was moving slowly down the street. She's been stealing from me, I said. Raymond nodded. And there's something else. He turned the papers around and pointed to a line item. 3 months ago, there was a business loan application submitted in your name to First Community Bank, $45,000 against the shop equipment. I never applied for a loan. I know, Raymond said. I called the bank this morning. They have your signature on the application. I looked at my hands. 41 years of watchmaking leaves a man with hands that are steady beyond what most people can imagine. The tremors that other people develop in their fingers, I never had. My hands were precise and controlled, tools as much as anything I kept in the drawers of my workbench. I don't shake, I said, but when I sign my name, I always drag the tail of the last letter. It's a habit from my father. He did it too. Long trailing line at the end, like I'm dotting a period after the signature. Raymond raised an eyebrow. Does your daughter-in-law know that? She has never seen me sign anything important, I said. She has seen me sign credit card receipts. She has never seen me sign a legal document. Raymond nodded slowly. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a magnifying glass, an old-fashioned one with a brass handle. He held it over the signature on the loan application. There's no trailing line, he said. He pushed the papers across the desk. I looked through the glass at the signature bearing my name. It was a good forgery. The letters were shaped correctly, but at the end, the signature simply stopped, clean, the way someone signs when they think the signature is complete. Raymond, I said, I want to know everything. He spent 2 hours on the phone. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk and listened to him talk. He called the Delaware Secretary of State's office. He called a forensic accountant he knew in Atlanta. He called a contact at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who owed him a favor from a case in 2011. By 10 o'clock, what we knew was this. Bright Horizon Properties, LLC, had been incorporated 11 months ago. The $92,000 taken from my business account had been transferred in small increments to avoid automatic fraud flags. The $45,000 loan had been funded 2 months ago. The money had gone to the same LLC account, and then, 8 days later, had been wired to a bank in the Cayman Islands. $137,000 of my money. Raymond leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. She's been planning this for at least a year, he said. The LLC was set up before she started doing your books. She wasn't helping you, Walter. She was positioning herself. I thought about the brochure for Sunrise Gardens. I thought about the home office. I thought about my daughter-in-law standing at the kitchen island with the deed transfer papers extended toward me like it was nothing. She needed me to sign over the house and the shop, I said. Because if you sign the properties over, Raymond said, the loan comes due when the title transfers. The bank gets paid from the equity. The trail disappears. Any investigation into the business account looks like normal real estate transaction overhead. Clean. 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 But if I don't sign, I said. If you don't sign, Raymond said. Eventually, the loan payments come due on a debt you didn't know you had. You get a default notice. An investigation starts. She's already in the wind by then, with what she could take. I thought about my grandson. He was 9 years old. He had his mother's hair and my son's eyes and a serious, focused way of watching me work that reminded me of myself at that age. I thought about what it would mean for him to grow up knowing his mother had stolen from his grandfather. I thought about what it would mean for him if the shop was gone, if the house was gone. Raymond, I said, I want to do this right. He looked at me. I want her to think she's winning, I said. I want her to think I folded. I want to give her enough rope. Raymond was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for his phone. I'm going to call my contact at the GBI again, he said. And I'm going to call a federal prosecutor I know in Atlanta. Because the wire transfer to the Cayman Islands makes this federal jurisdiction. That's money laundering, Walter. That's not a county court matter. Good, I said. Get them all. But first, I said, standing up, I have a dinner to plan. Raymond looked at me over his reading glasses. I need 1 week, I said. Tell them 1 week. I drove back to the house. My daughter-in-law's car was in the driveway. I went inside. She was at the kitchen table on her laptop. Real estate listings open on the screen. She looked up when I came in. She was already recalibrating, already ready with the next approach. I've been thinking, I said. I sat down across from her. I've been thinking about what you said, about the future, about the family. She closed the laptop slightly. She was very still, the way a cat gets still when it sees something interesting move in the grass. I'm not getting younger, I said. And you're right that I've been holding on to things out of sentiment when maybe the practical decision is different. I just need some time to come to terms with it. Can you give me that? She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. It was warm and practiced. Of course, Walter, she said. Of course we can. She called me Walter again. We were back to business. I want to have a family dinner, I said. I want to sign the papers in a proper setting. I want to invite someone from the shop, my old apprentice Bobby, and a few neighbors. People who knew Ellen. I wanted to feel like a real passing of the torch, not just paperwork on a kitchen counter. Her eyes were calculating, but she kept the warmth on her face. That's a beautiful idea, she said. A ceremony. I think that's exactly right. She thought I was broken. She thought the mention of Ellen had done it, that I was an old sentimental man who needed the right frame to accept his own defeat. She had no idea that every word I was saying was architecture. I told her to invite whoever she wanted. Investors, colleagues, anyone she thought would make the evening feel significant. I told her I would cook. She actually smiled at that. Her real smile, the one I had seen a handful of times in 4 years, was sharp and a little feral. This Saturday, she said. This Saturday, I agreed. I spent the rest of that week moving carefully. I called Bobby Tran, my former apprentice who now ran the repair side of the business. I told him what was happening. He went quiet for a long moment and then said in a low voice, "Boss, I saw her in the office 3 weeks ago after hours. I didn't say anything because I thought you knew." I told him I was glad he mentioned it and asked him to write down everything he could remember. I called my grandson's school counselor and let her know that some changes were coming in his home situation and asked her to keep an eye on him. I called Deb again and asked her to compile everything into a single document, clean and chronological. On Thursday afternoon, I drove to Atlanta to meet with the federal prosecutor Raymond had contacted. His name was Garrett. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of focused attention that made me feel like every word I said was being filed away for later use. I gave him the documents. I gave him Bobby's written statement. I walked him through the timeline. He asked me a few questions. He made notes. He said nothing that was memorable or dramatic. He was simply competent, which was exactly what the situation required. Saturday morning, I woke up at 5. I drove to the farmer's market in town and bought what I needed. I was making my mother's pot roast, the one that took 6 hours and made the whole house smell like it was 1987. Ellen used to say it was the meal that made people tell the truth because it was impossible to be dishonest in the presence of something that good. I got home, started the roast, and spent the rest of the morning in the shop. I needed to feel normal. I needed to feel normal. I needed the weight of the loop against my eye, and the smell of the lubricating oil and the sound of a movement ticking correctly after being cleaned and adjusted. I needed the ordinary world for a few hours. My grandson came by at 10. He always came on Saturdays. He didn't know about any of it. He sat on his stool and asked me what we were working on, and I showed him the school clock we were servicing, a big brass regulator from 1923. He asked about the dinner that night. His mother had told him there were going to be guests. "Is it a party?" he asked. "It's a family occasion," I said. "I want you to stay upstairs tonight while the adults talk, okay? I'll come get you when it's time for dessert." He looked at me with those serious eyes. "There's something wrong, isn't there, Grandpa?" It wasn't a question. He was 9, but he had been watching the climate of the house for weeks the way a child learns to read weather. I stopped what I was doing. I looked at him directly. Some things that were broken are going to get fixed tonight, I said. It's going to be loud and it might be a little scary. But I need you to know something. I am not going anywhere. This shop is not going anywhere. Everything that matters is going to be exactly where it should be by tomorrow morning. Can you trust me on that? He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded. He hugged me hard around the middle before he climbed down from the stool. He felt small and solid and absolutely irreplaceable. The guests began arriving at 6:30. My daughter-in-law had invited 4 people. 2 men I recognized as local real estate developers. A woman I didn't know who turned out to be her business partner. And a man I had never seen who she introduced as a notary. She had brought her own notary. She was so confident she had brought her own notary. She had dressed for victory, which in her case meant something tailored and severe with heels that made her sound like she was nailing something down with every step. She moved through the house like it was already hers, touching the door frames, looking at the rooms with a measuring eye. My son was nervous. He had been nervous all week. He drank 2 beers before the guests arrived and then switched to sparkling water, which told me some part of him understood more than he admitted. I served the pot roast at 7. I had set the dining room table with Ellen's china. The room smelled deep and warm and full, the way it used to smell on every Thanksgiving and Christmas for 30 years. Everyone ate. The real estate developers made small talk about the market. The notary said, almost nothing. My daughter-in-law watched me from across the table with the calm, composed expression of someone who believes she has already won. After the main course, I stood up. Thank you all for coming tonight, I said. Before we get to the papers, I want to make one introduction. My daughter-in-law frowned slightly. She hadn't expected a speech. She glanced at the folder on the sideboard where she had set the deed transfer documents. I walked to the kitchen and opened the back door. Garrett came in first. He was wearing a dark suit and carried a leather portfolio. Behind him were Raymond and a man I hadn't met, a GBI agent named Doss who had the build of a former linebacker and the face of someone who had stopped being surprised by people a long time ago. Behind Doss was a younger woman in a windbreaker who held a folder of her own. My daughter-in-law stood up from the table. Her chair scraped back hard against the floor. Who are these people? She said. This is Assistant United States Attorney Daniel Garrett, I said. He's from the Atlanta field office. I believe you've been corresponding with First Community Bank about a business loan application filed in my name. The color left her face so completely that for a moment the room seemed to tilt. One of the real estate developers said, "Excuse me, what is this?" "You're free to leave," I said to him. "I'm sorry to have involved you. This is a private matter. All of you are welcome to go." The developers looked at each other. They were up from the table before I finished the sentence. The notary followed so quickly, he left his briefcase. Only my son remained sitting. He had gone absolutely still, the beer glass forgotten in his hand, staring at his wife. My daughter-in-law turned on me. Her voice had dropped to something low and dangerous. "Walter," she said, "whatever you think you know, you need to be very careful. You are an old man, making accusations against your own family. You are going to look vindictive and crazy. These people are going to see that. Whatever Raymond has been filling your head with, it is not what you think." "It never is," I said. "It never is until the documents are laid out." Garrett set his portfolio on the table. He opened it and placed 3 documents face up on the white tablecloth. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, "these are copies of wire transfer records from a Bright Horizon Properties LLC account to a financial institution in the Cayman Islands. The total is $137,000 over an 8-month period. This is the business registration for Bright Horizon Properties LLC, filed in Delaware 11 months ago. And this is a forensic analysis of the signature on the First Community Bank loan application bearing Walter Whitfield's name." He placed a 4th document beside the others. "That last document," Garrett said, "is a signed affidavit from the loan officer at First Community Bank who processed the application. She has identified you from a photo. She has stated that you presented false identification. She agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency in her own proceedings." My daughter-in-law said nothing. She was looking at the documents, the way a person looks at a car accident, unable to stop and unable to look away. My son set down the beer glass. He looked at his wife. His voice came out like something stripped of everything except the bare fact. "You used Dad's name," he said. She turned to him. Her face was doing something complicated, cycling through expressions the way a machine cycles through options when it's trying to find the right output. "I did it for us," she said. "Preston, I did it for us. The market timing, the portfolio expansion, we needed the capital. Your father wasn't going to help. He was sitting on $400,000 of real estate, and he was using it to fix other people's clocks for 30 years. I did what needed to be done. With my father's money," he said, "with leverage that was just sitting there unused." She said it with such complete conviction, with such absolute certainty, that the logic was sound, that for a moment, the room was quiet. My son looked at me. He looked at me the way he had looked at me when he was 8 years old and had broken the shop window with a baseball and had to come to me to confess that same terrified, specific guilt. "I didn't know," he said. "I need you to believe that." I looked at my son. I thought about everything I wanted to say to him, all the versions of this conversation I had rehearsed during 40 sleepless minutes of the past week, and I let most of it go. "I know you didn't plan this," I said, "but you let it happen. You didn't ask where the money was coming from. You didn't ask why the books were closed to me. You didn't ask anything at all because asking meant knowing, and knowing meant choosing, and choosing was something you had been avoiding your whole life." He looked at the table. My daughter-in-law turned back to Garrett. She had made a decision. I could see it happen. She pulled herself up to her full height, and her voice became smooth and professional. "I want to speak to an attorney," she said. "Of course," Garrett said. "Agent Doss." The GBI agent stepped forward. He produced a document that he read from briefly and efficiently. When the handcuffs came out, they caught the light from the chandelier, which was an antique brass fixture I had restored myself in 1998. She didn't scream. I'll give her that. She stood straight, while Agent Doss guided her hands behind her back and closed the cuffs. She looked at me one last time over her shoulder as they walked her toward the door. "You're going to be alone," she said. "You know that. You're going to sit in this house with your clocks and your dead wife's dishes, and you're going to die alone, and there won't be anyone left who gives a single damn about you." I looked at her calmly. "Ellen's dishes are going to outlast both of us," I said. "And I've never been afraid of quiet." They took her through the door and down the front steps, and the night closed behind her. My son sat at the table alone among the ruins of the dinner. He wasn't crying. He was simply empty. A vessel that had been filled for years with someone else's certainty, and was now, for the first time in a long time, completely hollow. Raymond stayed. He sat across from my son, and they talked for a long time. I went upstairs. My grandson was in his room with the light on, supposedly playing video games. But when I pushed open the door, he was sitting on the bed with his knees pulled up to his chest, and he had clearly been listening to the sounds of the house for the past hour. "Hey, sport," I said. "Is Mom okay?" he asked. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I thought about how to answer that, and I decided to answer it the only way I know how, which is straight. "Your mom made some choices that hurt a lot of people," I said. "She's going to have to go away for a while and deal with the consequences of those choices. It's going to be hard, and I know that's scary." He looked at his hands. "Is Dad going to jail too?" he asked. "No," I said. "Your dad is going to go through some very hard things. But he's going to be here. And I'm going to be here. He's going to be here." He looked at me. "And the shop?" he asked. "Is the shop still ours?" I put my arm around him. "The shop is still ours. The clocks are still ticking." He leaned against me for a while. We sat there in the quiet of the upstairs, while Raymond's voice rose and fell somewhere below us, and the wind moved in the trees outside, and the grandfather clock in the front hall marked the hours the way it had marked every hour since 1963. That was 8 months ago. I am standing at the workbench this morning at 6:15. The sun is just beginning to come through the east window, laying a long yellow stripe across the display cases. There's a marine chronometer on the bench in front of me that came in last week from an estate sale in Savannah, and from the moment I opened the case, I could see she was worth saving. Beautiful instrument. Probably 1890s. Swiss movement. Badly neglected, but not beyond repair. The mainspring is intact. The pivot jewels are cloudy but sound. She just needs time and attention. I think about time a lot lately. My daughter-in-law was sentenced 6 weeks ago. Federal court in Atlanta. Bank fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, aggravated identity theft. The judge was a deliberate, unimpressed man who had clearly seen every version of this story and was not moved by the arguments her defense attorney made about stress and misunderstanding and the pressures of a competitive real estate market. He sentenced her to 9 years in federal prison. She looked at me from the defendant's table as the judge read the sentence. I don't know what she was looking for in my face. Satisfaction. Maybe. Regret. Something she could use. I kept my expression neutral and my hands still, and I thought about the chronometer in Savannah, sitting in that estate sale box for years, waiting for someone to recognize what it was. The $137,000 is gone. The Cayman Islands Bank has been cooperative with federal investigators, to the extent they are legally required to be cooperative, which is not very much. I have accepted that I will not see most of that money again. It is a loss I can absorb. A business that has been running for 41 years has absorbed losses before. The shop is mine. The house is mine. Both titles are clear and clean and filed with the county recorder in my name alone, which is how they should have been all along. My son is renting a house 2 miles from here. It is small, and it is modest, and it is his. He works for an HVAC company now, doing installation work. He comes to the shop on Tuesday evenings and helps me with the front desk paperwork. He does not take any money from the business. He has told me twice that he does not expect me to forgive him, and I have told him both times that forgiveness is a process, not a verdict. And we are in the process. He is learning who he is when someone else is not telling him. My grandson stays with me Wednesday nights and all day Saturday. He has a standing stool at the workbench. He is learning to use the loop. He is learning that a clock that is wound too tight will break, and a clock that is never wound will stop, and the whole art is in knowing the difference. I suspect this will serve him well in ways that have nothing to do with horology. Last Saturday, he asked me what the hardest part of building something is. I thought about it. I thought about 41 years of early mornings and difficult customers, and the year Ellen got sick, and I kept the shop open because we needed the money. And the year after she died, and I kept it open because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. Knowing when something is worth fighting for, I said. Not everything is, but when you find the thing that is, you fight for it with everything you have. Quietly if possible, loudly if necessary. He nodded. He was already back to work on the clock movement in front of him. His small hands, careful and precise, and completely serious. I watched him for a long moment. The shop smelled like oil and brass and old wood and time itself. The way it has always smelled. The way it will smell when I'm gone and someone else stands here with their hands doing what hands do when they love something enough to take it apart and understand how it works. Some people mistake patience for weakness. They see a man who doesn't shout, and they think he doesn't fight. They see a man who keeps working quietly at the same bench for 40 years, and they think he has nothing left worth taking. That is the last mistake they make. If you have ever had someone look at the life you built and see nothing but a number to be cashed out, this story is for you. You are not old. You are not finished. You are not a burden. You are exactly what you have always been. The most dangerous thing in the room. Hit the like button if this story reached something in you. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and whether you've ever had to fight for something that was always yours to begin with. Subscribe to Revenge Chronicles so you don't miss what's coming next. I have more stories. I have plenty of time. And I have learned, once and for all, that patience is not a weakness. It is the sharpest tool in the shop.